So the craziest thing just happened. We're in contract to buy this property. The closing was delayed. Come to find out there was a cloud on the title because there was a squatter in the property that was legally trying to steal the property right out from underneath the homeowner's nose. And if you remember my previous video about the man who stole a mansion, if you haven't seen that, click on the image down below this video and go to my channel, go to my videos and look for the man who stole the mansion. That one was a little more questionable, but this one is a little more legit. This one, the squatters were in the property and were legally trying to take the property through adverse possession. And if you don't know what adverse possession is, that's when, more commonly known as squatter's rights, when a squatter takes over a property and through legal means and over the course of time takes ownership of a property. It is a more obscure law. It's usually used for property line disputes between homeowners, but it can be used to take actual possession and ownership of a house. It is a legal mechanism whereby somebody can squat on a property and actually take ownership of that property. And that's exactly what it was trying to do. But there are some criteria that have to be met in order to legally obtain title to a property through adverse possession. There's 5 different things that you need. Number 1, it has to be hostile. You can't be welcomed in, a renter or a tenant. Basically, you have to trespass for a period of time. In some states, it's as low as 2 years. In other areas, it's as high as 40 years. The second thing that would need to happen, you have to actually possess the property. You can't just say, I claim this property in New Hampshire or some other obscure state. You have to actually live in the property and use it as your own. The third thing that needs to happen is it has to be open and notorious. You can't be hiding in the attic or in the shadows or shutting all those shutters in the door. You have to be living in an open and conspicuous manner so as the owner or any of the neighbors would be able to tell that you are actually living there. Number 4, it also has to be exclusive. You can't be occupying the property with the owner of the property. You have to be the exclusive occupant of that property. And the last one is it has to be continuous. Continuous, you can take vacations, you can go to the grocery store, but in the end, you have to be there for that specified period of time depending on your municipality. And then the last thing that you need to do is you need to prove it in court and you can get that property through adverse possession. And that's exactly what these people were doing. So when it came down to it, this particular property that we're talking about didn't end up going through the courts. Once the squatter was contacted, he graciously gave back the property. He says, I've been keeping it up. Well, here's your property back in better condition than I got it. By the way, I've been renting out the property for the past 2 years and they took good care of it too. So they signed a quitclaim deed back to the previous owner. The previous owner was then able to sell it to us. How crazy is that? So anyway, after everything was said and done with this property, I had to track down this squatter because I had a lot of questions for him. I'm not necessarily going to weigh in on the ethics of doing this, but in the end, it was very interesting, and as a student of real estate, I needed to understand this. So I did a skip trace on this person and ended up finding the squatter and getting him on the phone and asking him some questions. My first question is how did you even learn about this? And he said that a previous friend from the military service had told him about how to do this and that he had done it in the past, and so he wanted to try it. And I said, have you ever done this successfully? And he says, no, this property was probably the furthest I got. I've done it on several properties before. One of them was brand new. Anyway, he was just going into all these stories. He was telling me that he's done this in the past several times. And in the end, he's able to live in this property for years and years or rent it out for years and years. And this property, he actually had to deed back to the previous owner, but he probably could have fought it and might have even won because of the position he was in. I asked him questions like, how do you target the properties? How do you figure out which property to go to? He's like, well, you got to do your homework. He's known several people that have tried it and failed right away. He's been successful and able to live in the property for years. And he says you find people that are out of state, you find people that are late on their taxes, obviously a vacant property. And that's his approach to finding these properties. And I said, what are the biggest risks with doing something like this? And he says, the biggest risk is you may have a sheriff show up at your door or a homeowner show up at your door and say, hey, why are you in my house? And all he does is he shows them illegal paperwork. He tries not to escalate the situation. He just says, hey, I've got an adverse possession claim on this house. Let's sort this out. Here's my name and phone number. He was very cordial about it and very just upfront because this is a legal way to do this. He also said one thing you have to keep in mind if you're going to do this is to keep it legal. You can't break into the property. There can be no illegal activity to start with. So now there's something else called prescriptive easement, which is very similar, but the main difference is you don't end up getting title with prescriptive easement. You just get the ability to use the property. For example, I've been driving over the corner of this property for the last 10 years. Even though it's not mine, I'm filing for a prescriptive easement to allow me to continue to use that easement, so to speak. The ownership is retained in the owner's name, but you're allowed access to that property. So this is the craziest thing. I mean, he just goes around and finds these properties and he adversely takes possession of them. And like this video, if for no other reason than because I've been squatting this entire video and it's really hard. So hopefully this is helpful and we'll see you on the next video.